Maybe this is exposing my age, but today I want to talk about Boy Meets World. One episode in particular, and that is the Halloween one. I mean, come on guys, it's the Phantom of the Indie Review. We talk about scary stuff. I know what you're thinking. There are a lot of Boy Meets World Halloween episodes. Today we're going to talk about the infamous one. And then there was Sean. Oh, this one is so good, dude. Like, oftentimes TV shows from your childhood hit you with core memories that you never forget, and this one is one of them. And thanks to Disney Plus, no sponsorship, I got to rewatch it, and it was so much funnier and spookier than I remembered. So Corey and Topanga break up, and this causes uncomfortability for Sean, and he doesn't quite know why. You know, Corey is his best friend, Topanga is his other best friend, and this really bothers Sean that they're no longer together. Sean comes to class and realizes that Corey and Topanga are no longer sitting together, and he has to, sit between them, causing a wedge, metaphorically. Class is just having a troubled time getting started, and this bothers Mr. Feeney. There's this neighboring student named Kenny who asks if he can borrow Topanga's pencil, and this causes concern for Sean. He's like, bro, you ain't doing that. After a little teenage drama, Feeney has had enough and he gives them detention. This is where the episode turns into a very meta, spoofy horror. I mean, it came out in 1998, around the time of Scream. You even have a brief cameo from Jennifer Love Hewitt, one of the 90s Scream queens herself. During the detention, Feeney leaves, and when they question him, he goes, I don't have to be here, I'm not in detention. So he leaves, and to Sean's dismay finds out that the door had been locked. Why would Feeney lock them in the classroom? That's torturous. And then this is where the meta horror aspect takes place of the classroom being creepy, that if it was a slasher film, obviously the main cast wouldn't be picked apart and Kenny would be the first victim, because maybe other than background episodes, this is like his first talking role, and it was pretty funny. Her horror suspicions start to come true. They raise a little curtain on the chalkboard, and in blood it says no one gets out alive. During all of this, there's a creepy janitor walking back and forth in the hallways that they're thinking maybe it's a red herring, maybe it's the killer, but this creepy janitor is really taunting them. A suspicious knock comes on the classroom door, and when they open it, they are hit with a jump scare of Eric and Jack. And then during a dispute, Kenny says, you know what? Corey and Topanga aren't together anymore, and if I want to borrow her pencil, I can, and there's nothing you can do about it. Then all of a sudden the lights cut and they turn on, and we find him dead with a pencil through his head. And that's when Eric says, oh my gosh! They killed Kenny! They run into the hallways to try to escape the clutches of this killer, and an eerie, intense song comes over the intercom as they all look in peril and desperation.
Welcome to John Adams High, where you are gonna die, that's right. All right.
Feeny, you're so low budget.
Sean seems to play the part of the horror aficionado, where he kind of guides the audience and characters through the trope of what's expected in a horror movie, which obviously, like I said, it's been done before, but it's just funny seeing it in Boy Meets World. They're like, Sean, what's happening? And he's like, well, first we'll turn our heads, and as we look down one hallway, someone will be lurking behind us, and as they do that, obviously someone runs by them, and it's pretty funny. They're convinced that Feeney is behind all of this. So like, bro, he's obviously trying to teach us a lesson. We're a little bit older, so he can't quite scare us how he wants, so he's gonna prank us. After they find the janitor dead, Sean also says the lights are gonna turn back on. Feeney is gonna reveal his grand plan, and hit like a cue, it happens where the music stops and they all see Feeney and they go up and they're laughing and they're like, Feeney, you clever dog, how could you get us like this? Pat him on the shoulder, and he has a pair of scissors in his back. Feeney was not the culprit. This is no longer a prank. Mayday, red alert. They're really committed on the fact that the janitor is the killer until they find the janitor's body hidden inside of a waste barrel. It's funny too because Angela takes a role as a scream queen, where essentially every time something mildly terrifying happens, she screams.
No, you scream when the lights go off. The scream when the lights come on takes away from the first scream. Now you're just being wild.
And then in comes Jennifer Love Hewitt, whose character is Jennifer Love Pfefferman, that they all call Pfeffy. She's new in town, and she was in study hall when she realized that she was the only one left at school, and they kind of accept her into the friend group, Eric specifically. And I want to make notes that Eric is probably one of the funniest characters on the show ever. I don't care what anyone says, Will Friedle is a mastermind. As a class act comedian, I feel like his delivery is there, his timing.
Oh my gosh! They killed Feeney!
His all-around performance just really makes us funny. The show is obviously funny and it's not really supposed to be scary, but what he does is 10 times better than what anyone else could. They end up going to the library where Sean decides, hey, it's time to split up. In the library is when all the students start getting picked off one by one. And there's a tension between Corey and Topanga this whole episode that's interesting too, where it's like, even though Jennifer Love Pfefferman is just in this episode as like a cameo, and Kenny, who wanted to borrow the pencil, was just asking for a pencil, you could feel that there was still a tension and discomfort between that breakup, and Sean was taking it very personally. It starts off with the cameo Jennifer Love Pfefferman. She goes down one of the aisles, kisses Corey on the cheek, and tells him everything's going to be okay, and then she gets avalanched by a pile of books, killing her. But before she dies, she says to Eric, I know who the killer is. But before she gets to say that, Eric is then hit with a bunch of books, killing off 2 integral characters to this episode. Around the corner, the rest of the gang comes, and Jack is hit harder by this than most. I mean, you figured Corey would be because it's his brother, but Jack's like, no, dude, he's my roommate. He pays half my rent. And if I can't have a roommate paying my rent, then I don't want to live at all. So he goes to unalive himself. That's right, he goes to jump out the window, but Angela stops him and she goes, bro, Sean is still your roommate. You guys can do this together. And as he's relieved and they go to hug it out, the killer pops up and pushes him out the window. And the one thing I'll say is I really like the character depiction, because even though it's corny and not original at all, it's just a hooded phantom with a skeleton mask. And as we saw that killer lurk throughout the entire building, to in the shadows now, they are confronted, Corey, Topanga, and Sean face to face with the killer, and they're all standing there, and the killer walks up and puts Corey and Topanga's hands together. This blows Sean's mind, so he unmasks the killer, and the killer is Sean. But then, it's the 90s, what do you expect? Cuts to a scene where he's waking up from a dream, and it was all a dream. And, you know, he's very disturbed by this. Corey tries to coax him into being like, hey, you fell asleep during detention. Now that you're awake, look over, and Feeney's staring at him ruthlessly. This is where Sean is hit with the revelation. With the little slasher part of the episode, Sean is really fighting for Topanga and Corey more so than anything. And he reveals essentially that for some psychological reason that he can't pinpoint, he takes the blame for himself, because Corey and Topanga had been together since he was a kid. And it really breaks his heart, you know, his 2 closest friends have broken up and there's nothing he can do about it. And it's pretty much said that, well, you know, Sean is a good-hearted bad boy, often on the bad side of the tracks, rebelling, getting in trouble, and it's more of an inner fight with himself, because he feels like every time something wrong happens, he's to blame, because he's always public enemy number 1. And Feeney confides, and he's like, yo, like, you're just a troubled young man. Like, you took the blame because that's all you know, but everything's gonna be okay. And a very beautiful message at the end. That's what I really liked about this episode, like, behind the meta corny goofs, and like, obviously, like, the horror cliches, like, there was a meaning at the end of the episode. It wasn't just like, hey, let's do a Halloween episode, like let's make a story out of it. And then the episode hits you with a funny little ending where Feeney's dreaming that he has a perfect class, and they're all adoring him and treasuring him as the teacher he is, and then he wakes up to them just like trashing the class, throwing paper airplanes, talking loud, laughing, and he picks up a pair of scissors and clenches them tight like he's about to snap. And then it ends, giving it a little perfect bouquet of a scary episode from start to finish. Obviously Halloween inspired, not the movie, the holiday. Creepy, quirky, funny, and it's just a great episode. Like, I could watch it many times and never get sick of it. I remember it specifically from being a kid. I watched it so many times. Late nights at 2 in the morning, staying up late when I had school, and seeing it on like ABC Family, and then rewatching it today. It's just such a great episode. So if you guys like Boy Meets World, if you like 90s sitcoms, if you like corny horror, this episode is right up the alley for you. But yeah, guys, that's the episode. Subscribe, give it a thumber, hit that little ding-a-ling button harassing you, telling you, hey, it's me, I'm here. And I'm gonna say it 1 time for the 1 time, 2 time for the O's, to be a hell yeah for horror. I wish Ryder Strong was in way more stuff, because he's a great actor.
Did we upset you?
Yes!
Upset you enough to kill?
Dun dun dun. I'm done.